let's get the low pony going. We are looking a little librarian fresh today, so for that reason, brought the thickest sweater I own on an 80-degree September day. And some apple cinnamon tea on the inside, even though I literally hate tea, but for the ambiance, you know, gotta do the old librarian thing. Timmy, it's time to be quiet because you're in the library. You ever go to the library in middle school and the librarian, when they'd get really angry, they'd like pull the glasses down? Like, what is this?
You literally look exactly like that. Do that.
Anywho, welcome back. Tonight we're getting a little bit librarian-y. Librarian-y. We're getting a little librarian-y. I'm literally sweating in this sweater. But I really wanted to look cute because books are my favorite thing in the world. Tea I honestly hate, but it feels right to have a cup of tea, talk about some books, you know, a little yada yada, if you know what I'm saying. No, on a serious note, we're talking my favorite books ever that I've read in my life, which I became an avid reader probably about 4 or so years ago. And on that topic, I just wanted to share some of my faves. This past weekend at Barnes & Noble, my boyfriend and I found this section that was called Blind Date with a Book, where they wrap each book in brown paper and they write a little description on the front of what genre of book it is and kind of a little bit about what it is. I picked the one that sounded the most right for me, so tonight I am going to reveal what the mystery book is. It's been sitting in my living room for like 5 days and I'm literally gnawing at the bit because I'm so excited to open it. There's a high chance I already own it because I have a lot of books that fit this description, but basically it's nonfiction, inspirational, so at the end of the video we will reveal, so make sure you watch the whole thing to stay tuned. We are going in no specific order, so this is a good majority of all nonfiction because I'm a pretty big nonfiction reader. All business, spiritual, personal growth or personal development related. So that's the kind of book that I enjoy reading. Hopefully that is for you too, and if not, this is a great opportunity to figure out what books might fit your style if you are not a reader and you want to be. Okay, so the first book on the top of my pile is Fail Until You Don't by Bobby Bones. I actually read this book on the flight to Salt Lake City when my boyfriend and I went in August of 2018, and it was something that I randomly found. Bobby Bones is a radio host pretty successfully. I think he's still on Sirius Radio, I'm not 100% sure, but he's got a very successful radio show on there, and in this book he talks about his life and the triumphs and the challenges that he faced, with a pretty big plot twist in there about something big that happened in his childhood that if you like reading memoirs, this is definitely for you. One thing that I took away from this book big time back then was that I remember it being the very first weekend, the week we were in Salt Lake was the first weekend my weekly email went out into the world, which is called Sunday Sunrise. It's been going strong for 2 years. Every single Sunday, I write like a blog post, something inspirational to start your week. This book was a huge inspiration for helping me to figure out my voice and figure out how I wanted to communicate certain messages and speak in a kind way that also challenged and motivated my community, you. And so reading this book helped me to sort of refine my voice through written form. And that's the one big takeaway that I got from this book. Throughout this video, I'm going to kind of talk about personal experiences that I've gotten from each book. Not necessarily the same that you will get, but I just think it's cool to hear about where people are at certain parts of their journey and what kinds of stories and inspiration they pull from books, because your experience will be totally different from mine, and it's something that I think is valuable to share. Next is a true classic. This was actually mailed to me from Amazon from a mentor and family friend, because I was really struggling when I very first started my blog, like back in 2016. And she is also an entrepreneur, and she said, look, this is exactly how I felt when I started, and this book is going to help you figure out and categorize the thoughts that are happening in your mind and separate your consciousness from your thoughts. In the first few chapters, there's a lot of heavy reading. It's a little sciencey, it's a little over my head, but once you push past the first few, it really takes you on a journey inside of why you're thinking the way that you are, and it helped me to not sabotage the progress that I was making and avoid putting so much pressure on myself. And it's something that I continually have to come back to and read to prevent that, because even though I work on it, it doesn't prevent it from happening altogether. Genius Foods took me 6 months to read. Like, I read so much. This book took me 6 months because of how information heavy and packed it is. And the story behind this book is that I went to Barnes & Noble. This is the place that I go when I'm sad, when I'm happy. Like, Barnes & Noble is my place. I get a coffee, I chit chat with some elderly people. It's just a great time. Also, the smell of Barnes & Noble is oddly calming, and I don't know if other people feel the same way, but Barnes & Noble is just my place. I went to Barnes & Noble and I was looking for a book that was based on nutrition, but not in a diet sense. So I wanted a book that was, here are ways to improve your nutrition without promoting a diet, because that's not what I'm looking for. I want to be smarter and more energized and happier. This was the one that I found, and this book is worth its weight in gold. It is difficult to read, not gonna lie. But what you'll learn in this book is years and years and years of studies and research and different professionals put into one place. And literally every chapter, let's just take a peek inside real quick. Every chapter is a concept about how to improve your brain health with nutrition. The whole purpose is that one of the authors, his mom got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she was perfectly healthy before that. And then as she progressively got sick and passed away, he was on a quest to figure out how to reverse this cycle, how to help people to not get so sick neurologically, if there was a way that we could prevent the disease. Chapter 2 is Fantastic Fats. Chapter 3 is Overfed Yet Starving, which I absolutely love that concept, since we're constantly eating garbage food that is empty calories, but we're not actually nourishing our bodies. I highly suggest reading it if you are super interested in how to better your brain health and you have some prior knowledge base of how the body works. If you're a beginner and you have not really a good sense of facts and different terms from the medical field, it might be a tough read for you. But if you're someone who's a little more advanced, or you went to school for something in this realm, this book is definitely going to be helpful for you. But that's none of my business. If I consider The Untethered Soul and Genius Foods 2 of the Bibles that rule my life, Atomic Habits is number 3. So, funny story about this. Last year I hosted a live event at one of my friend's gyms called the Bar Athletics in Willoughby, and my events planner, Christy, who is now a good friend, the way that we met through a mutual friend, and she started out by saying, "The book that you love, I went to college with the author." And here I am across the table like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. My life, if I met this guy, my life would be over. Like, the amount of respect I have for authors, and not only just any author, but someone who puts this much love and respect and heart and sacrifice into a book, is something that is worth its weight in gold. I got this book in North Carolina. We stayed with our friends from PTA school, and we went to a bookstore because the girlfriend of the couple we were staying with also happened to be a big book nerd, so the two of us were like going crazy in Books A Million because they closed the one up here. And that was the day that the two of them truly convinced me to like start putting my journal out there, because the journal, the One Ray Habit Tracker, had been a thing for a couple of months. And when we went to visit them, they were like, in the bookstore, they're like, "This looks like your journal. Like, you gotta get your journal out there." And when I did, I ended up booking a book deal where I could sell my books at a local bookstore in Chagrin Falls. They are still there to this day, and when they sell out, I just bring more to them. So this book holds very near and dear to my heart. It was also a trip that we took because I was going through a couple really hard things at the time. One of them being my dog getting diagnosed with cancer, and it was just a good weekend getaway to somewhere that we've never been, which was Wilmington, North Carolina. Beautiful place. I didn't even know One Tree Hill was filmed there until we went, and they were pointing out all the spots. And every souvenir shop, I kept seeing shirts that said Karen's Cafe, and I'm like, what's that? And I guess it's this massive deal if you're into One Tree Hill. And so this book holds quite a few memories very close to my heart, and I think that even though none of that has to do with the actual book itself, if you want to change anything in your life at all, this is the book that will help you to understand human behavior and how you should go about it. And not so much the why you should go about it, that's another book by Simon Sinek, but the how to actually implement the habit change. Super Attractor by Gabby Bernstein. If you don't know who Gabby Bernstein is, she did an Oprah Super Soul session in person. She's also on the podcast. And the title of her talk was The Universe Has Your Back. And when I watched that, I was profoundly changed in a way that connected me spiritually, but not necessarily in a religious way. And this is not the video to go into either of those things, but this just helped me reaffirm that having a connection to other people, to nature, if a higher power is your thing, then it definitely helped me in that sense. She goes into different ways that the universe is conspiring to give you a good life and to motivate you and to push you to be your best self and to show up for your life and to look for the good in situations. And definitely that's something I struggle with from time to time. And this book just really spoke to me in a way that was kind of a guidance and support that I'm doing the right thing, even when it feels like nothing is going right, or like for example, growing the YouTube channel. It's gonna take a long time, and sometimes I get frustrated. Am I doing the right thing? I'm seeing no return on investment, right now. And this book really helped me to be able to talk myself down and reaffirm that even though you don't see the benefit right now, it is gonna pay off, along with a couple of good people around me too. But this book is good for the inner self-talk, and I guess the biggest takeaway is she helps you to realize, not to take things as personally as you want to, because that definitely creates a lot of discomfort and unhappiness. And two, to remember that your spirit guides, whether it be somebody who passed away that you still have a connection to, or nature, or a person, or whatever it is, they're looking out for you and they're guiding you and supporting you to live a good life, and that you shouldn't feel guilty for enjoying your life and for being successful and living the life of your dreams. And that's what this book gave for me. The story behind this book is that last year for my birthday, I turned 24, and my boyfriend took me to Barnes Noble and we picked this book out, and he got it for me for my birthday. So that was a really special birthday gift when someone gets me a book. All right. Make Time is my current read, actually. It was written by two guys who previously worked at Google, specifically the Gmail section, and YouTube, which is owned by Google. And they were part of developing, they were software engineers, which is like way over my head, who built those platforms or contributed to them. So they know, and they have the inside clue of why those apps exist to suck you in, to make you distracted and waste time. Like, you ever go on your phone for like 5 minutes and you look up and it's been 2 hours? Me too. And I don't like that. And I feel like I am a slave to my phone and social media and my apps. And so they basically created this book to say, hey, we know you're feeling this way, and we want to give you research and science-based tips and studies that have been conducted to reverse that. So there's actually another one of our videos that's going to go into a little more into depth about that. It's called How to Plan Your Week. If you would like to hear more about this book specifically, make sure you do watch that episode. The story behind this book is there's not really a story. When I got this book initially, the binding was getting ripped out of the book, and that was really disappointing, and I had to wait like 6 days to get a new one because they didn't have it in stock. And then as we were checking out the second time, my boyfriend was like, check the book. And here there's like a couple little skid marks in the crack, and he was just looking at it like with big eyes, and I'm like, it's fine, I'm just gonna buy it, it's fine, like let it go, the book binding is in there. And I finally signed up for Barnes & Noble's rewards when I bought this book, so mazel. These are 2 books that I have not yet read, but I figured I would just share that I'm planning to read them. Modern Mindfulness, How to Be More Relaxed, Focused, and Kind While Living in a Fast, Digital, Always-On World. You can kind of see where my head is at right now in reading this, or in planning to read this. And then the other one is called Super Communicator, Explaining the Complicated so anyone can understand. Given that communication is all of the jobs that I have, like every single one, I'm communicating to people, this felt right. Also, not gonna lie, these 2 books were both on the $5 rack at Barnes & Noble, and I thought, you know what, they sound pretty good, so I get excited when I get a good deal. We're getting snuggly for the next section. These are books that are on my iPad. I recently took up a love and appreciation for physical books. So these books that I'm talking about are from when I used to work at my old job. So I worked for actually it was a chiropractic company, and I was in the PT section. And we were really slow, we were transitioning owners, and I had a lot of time to waste, if you know what I'm saying, at work. So I'd bring my iPad with me to do my notes, and I started reading on there, and my boss never knew, and I got paid for it, so it all worked out. So the first book that I ever read was recommended to me by one of my longtime, like for years, one of my friends that I met on Instagram. She was one of my very first clients when I did wellness coaching way back in 2016. Her name is Ashley, and actually it's a full circle because now she's a gut health coach. So she specializes in gut health. She's now a health coach. It all worked out wonderfully. And she recommended to me this book called Business Boutique by Christy Wright. Christy Wright works for Dave Ramsey, who is a money guy, I guess you could say. He's all about like compounding interest and saving money and all of that, and she was one of his personalities. And so she kind of branched off on her own and started Business Boutique, that was with the idea of women creating a small business to impact the world. So women creating small business the smart way, by not going into debt, by doing it like the savvy way, the bootstrapped way. And that was the first book I read. So ever since then, that's always been the way that I've operated. You know, I fund everything myself, and everything, you know, kind of starts and ends with us. So that was a big motivation in doing that. And that was the first book that made me fall in love with reading, and more importantly, connecting to other people's stories. Next book is another big one in my early journey of reading, which is called High Performance Habits by Brandon Burchard. He is another habit guy, and he talks about how he coached and works with some of the highest performing athletes, business people, celebrities, and he shares the secrets that he believes gets them out of bed in the morning, has energy all day, and then sleeps well at night. And you know that I'm so hyper obsessed with the way that my routines work and how much energy I can create throughout the day and sustain and all of that. So that was a really tactical book where I actually was able to take things away from it and kind of get clear in my own life of what's working and what's not, and make adjustments as needed. This book I found last December, specifically on New Year's Eve, and it also happened to be the day that we made the decision to have my dog put down because she was very sick with cancer, and I was looking for something to just get me through it. Not to make me feel better, not to soothe, but just something to help me get there in the best possible mindset I could. I read the book in like 12 or 15 hours. It was a very short amount of time. I found the book on a Sunday and I started it Monday night. I slept at home that night, and then the next morning, you know, of course, I didn't sleep. My dog was 15. She's lived with us since she was 1. And I woke up at like 2 a.m. and I read this book. And this book, I honestly attribute to helping me get through the experience. Upset, you know, I cried, but I didn't lose myself in the process. I didn't feel like I had regrets or that I handled anything wrong or that I chickened out because I was scared. Like, this book gave me the courage to go in the room and do the hard thing. And honestly, like, I kid you not, for the whole 15 years of her life, I dreaded what that day would look like. I hoped I would get to that day and that nothing would happen before then, but I sincerely, I think as any pet parent, you dread the day that you have to be in the room for that. And the experience was oddly peaceful and comforting and almost, I don't want to say beautiful, but it was a really, what's the right word to use? It was exactly how it needed to go. And this book is all about things that Oprah basically reaffirms in her life that feels good and true for her. And that was one of the things she talks about, savoring small moments. And I'm sure someday I'll be able to look back on that day and not get upset and not feel like there's a knife in my heart. But again, this book has humongous meaning to it, and I suggest it for anyone going through a good time and especially going through a bad. Okay, next book is honestly one of my favorites. I really love reading about other entrepreneurs in their life and how they got their start, not just what they do and how successful they are, but what their life was like when they were at the bottom, because I feel like I relate to that very much so right now. And so Sophia Amoruso's Girl Boss was my absolute favorite for that. And for those of you who aren't familiar with her, she started a clothing brand called Nasty Gal, and she started it by basically going to thrift stores, finding cute clothes, and this was before vintage was in style. And she would, she figured out how to put them on eBay and online platforms, and she would hand steam press them herself and fold them perfectly and ship them to customers. And she has a really unique story. She talked about how horrible of an employee she was at all the jobs she worked, and then how she worked for 15, 16 hours a day from home doing this clothing company. True, authentic entrepreneur story of starting from the bottom. And I really respect people who not only live through that, but can actually look back and accurately write about it as well. If you are a creative, you have to read this book. Now, it's not for everyone, just a disclaimer. Some people don't like to look at things this way. Some people don't identify with this kind of thing, but Liz Gilbert in this book, and if you're unfamiliar, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, City of Girls, some of the best well-known stories to ever exist in book and movie form. And in this book, she talks about how ideas arrive to us in energy. And again, I talked about this book in Embrace Your Feelings, which is also another one of our videos, how ideas arrive to you in an energetic field. And I resonate with that because that's how I started my brand. It came to me like a burst of energy. It was almost like an epiphany, if we want to put an actual word to it, but it's not something I can describe in words. It just felt like it was the right thing to do, and I had no idea where it was going or what my plan was or what I was going to talk about. It just felt like it arrived to me, and I could never put that into words until I read this book. So if you're a creative person, if you are feeling uninspired, or you don't know if you should pursue a project that's on your plate, this book is something you will love. She's an awesome author. She has a crazy life story. And Liz Gilbert is somebody that I respect also quite a bit. Coincidentally, this was not planned, but I feel as though I have saved the best for last. If you have not read the last lecture, you need to. I read this book with a lump in my throat the whole time. It's about a professor from Carnegie Mellon who finds out he has pancreatic cancer, and he's got two young kids and a wife, and he basically has to make plans and arrangements for their life after he's gone. And he decides to do something at the college that he teaches at, and he calls it the last lecture because it's the last time he'll ever go up and teach his class. And it's a really beautiful way that he ties the whole story together and ends it on a very specific note. And then you kind of look back, like, I love these books where you look back and you're like, oh, that's the underlying theme of the whole story. Like, he basically tells his life story, and then at the very end it kind of just like hits you in the heart. And it's really good perspective-wise if you're struggling with just really anything. If you're like in a rut or you feel like you need a bittersweet pick-me-up, it's not something that will make you feel warm and sweet on the inside. It's something that will give you kind of a slap in the face or a splash of cold water of like how short life is and how you cannot waste 1 second of it, how you have to say the thing that you feel on your heart to a person that you feel a certain way about, or trying something new so that you have no regrets when you get to your deathbed. And that kind of stuff, even though I find it uncomfortable to read because I don't want to put myself in that position, I also find it highly gratifying to think of what kind of decisions would I make now, knowing if I were in that position where I was on my deathbed, that's how I would want to feel. Not a heartwarming book, but it will make you feel so good at the end. The moment of truth. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Okay, you guys, we made it. The moment of truth. You have absolutely no idea how excited I am. Like I said, there's a good chance I already own this book because this describes everything that I want in a book. But before we open it, like I said, it's nonfiction, inspirational. It says, if you're feeling lost, stuck, or need a pick-me-up, this book is for you. Easy to read narrative, real soul-filled insight, wisdom, guidance, encouragement for a meaning of life. Honestly, it sounds like the last lecture, and I was thinking that when I picked it up. But here goes nothing. Let's see. Cut my nails today. It's like opening a gift on the first day of Christmas. The first day of Christmas. On the day of Christmas. I own this book. This is a really good book. It's called I've Been Thinking by Maria Shriver. My mom actually bought me this book when I moved out, which is hilarious that this is the actual book. I had a feeling based on what was written on the cover. I do own this book, and it's about her life, looking at it from the backseat. So like she's watching her children move on and move out and go to college. And she's looking back and reflecting on her life, and she's taking insight from it and just sharing her thoughts in the book. Very similar to Oprah, What I Know for Sure. It's really good. She got it for me, like I said, when I moved out. She actually bought it for me when I was going to college because she thought I was gonna move out, and then I didn't, and so she saved it for when I actually moved out of my house. It's a little on the religious side, and that part I didn't really connect with, so that was the only bummer. I didn't include it on the list today because of that. But if you're someone who's into that, someone who finds peace and comfort in that, then this book is definitely for you. Well, folks, cheers to that. I hope you enjoyed going through my books with me. Honestly, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I went on YouTube before we filmed this, and I kind of looked at what other people did to review books, and all they did was just reiterate what the book was about. And like, I can go on Google and I can look and see that for myself. I want to know your story and where you were at in your life when you read this book and how it helped you, or how it gave you insight, or how it got you through an experience. So I genuinely hope you got that from this video tonight, and I'm so excited that I got to share my little library with you. Let me know which book was your favorite, or what book you are considering reading after this. Thanks for joining as always, and that's none of my business.